everybody. It's Helen Hillix, and welcome to the summit, Sacred Sexuality Revealed, Secrets to Deeper Intimacy, Passionate Connections, and Lasting Desire. And I am so excited to have Todd Malloy on today from North Carolina. And I will tell you a little bit more about Todd before, and we'll dive into a wonderful conversation. He and I have already talked about some really deep questions to share today, so I'm really excited to get in.
Yeah, I'm excited as well.
Oh, great. So I want to talk just for a minute about why I'm doing this summit, and that is doubly professionally and personally. I have a real passion for the topic of sacred sexuality. As a child, I lived in kind of an over-sexualized environment of the sexual revolution. That's when I grew up as a young person. And, you know, everybody's supposed to be having sex with everybody, and yet there's this puritanical backdrop. So it was a very conflicted time. It caused me a great deal of pain in that I did a lot of sexual acting out, had abortions, all kinds of painful experiences, not sacred sexuality. And it took me decades longer to really discover what sacred sexuality was. And I want to make sure to add my voice to the movement of changing the conversation in our culture about sexuality. And the second reason is I've been a marriage and family therapist for 35 years, and I've seen many, many couples and individuals who are struggling with some of these same issues of, what is sacred sexuality? Why don't I want sex with my husband anymore? And on and on and on. I have premature or early ejaculation. I mean, it's everything. My husband wants sex and I don't, or I want sex and he doesn't. It's so many painful issues I've seen in my practice. So This is the second summit that I'm doing about that topic, and I expect to do more. So that's why I have a passion for this, and that's why we're here today. So let me tell you a little bit about Todd Malloy. He's a bold and innovative thinker who delivers solutions for the big issues of life in an inspiring way. He's a rare individual as a marriage and family therapist, certified sexuality educator, lecturer, producer, and author. Todd Malloy tackles some of the most complex problems of our time. And he's got a whole big, long list of certifications and degrees and activities, one of which is that he is the founder and clinical director of Inner Peace Counseling Center. And that's actually how I found Todd. I love that title of your business. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, Todd.
I appreciate you having me.
And tell us about that to start with, about Inner Peace Counseling. How and why did you name it that, and what does it have to do with sacred sexuality?
Well, it's really about self-awareness. I think a lot of things we can coin it a lot of different ways, but life has a lot of threads. But it all resonates from really what's inside of us and our own sense of well-being and our own sense of peace. And I really believe that if when we begin to focus on an internal peace, does external peace show up? When I actually know who I am and I am comfortable with who I am, I know how to position myself environmentally to have the experience that I want to have, to create an environment for me that I can best thrive. But without self-awareness, self-transparency, how will I ever know how to position myself to teach people how to care for me? So at which point I can gain an internal peace, therefore it will resonate throughout the rest of the other dimensions of my life.
Wow. we could talk about that, just that one answer for the entire interview. And the reason I say that, Todd, is my experience has been that people do not have a lot of self-awareness because it's not something that we're taught.
Right. We're taught to look outwardly and focus on what goes around them, be polite, be this, do all of these things based on the environmental factors around you. But we're taught to neglect self. And that's where I redirect my clients and any audience that I'm speaking to, is to really look inwardly for the best outward experience.
Can you tell, I mean, well, let's first of all see how you define sacred sexuality. And then I'd like to dive into how do you teach people that? That's what I really want my audience or our audience to have is tools, real guidance. So first tell us what sacred sexuality means to you.
Well, to me, it's really the God experience. It's not about moving pieces and parts. Anything can create, almost anything can create an ejaculation. But it's really about a self-awareness and a willingness to be vulnerable and to be naked and unashamed, both figuratively and literally. And then being able to connect with someone to share that experience. And as I've been taught and academically and experientially, that's the true godlike experience. Because now we become much larger than the sum of the pieces and parts. We create to a universal energy that transcends the action that's taking place.
I love that. It's not about pieces and parts.
Right. No, we can throw pieces and parts at anything and anybody. But when I really want to share, because intimacy and sexuality is really neck up, not waist down. So as I am free of mind, free of spirit, and comfortable with myself, comfortable with the environment and the person that I'm connected to, now we transcend the natural and go into a spiritual realm.
Just to clarify for the audience, what if people don't have a concept of quote unquote God? Can you relate to that in a more...
It's not even necessary. Okay, well, let's put it this way. There's a universal force and energy that creates and keeps the planets and all of those things together. I'm a lifetime martial artist, so therefore I've been exposed to Taoism, the I Ching, and different things. We're not separate and apart from the universal order. We're we're a part of that system. And by coming together, being transparent, vulnerable, and naked on, again, that figuratively and literal level, allows us to tap into that universal energy force that's circulating through life, which is far bigger than any of us.
I love that, Todd, and I really love that saying. And if you see me looking down, sometimes it's that I'm taking notes on what you're saying so that I can add this, for people who are listening, that they can really have those written takeaway points already identified for them.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I love that intimacy happens from the neck up and not the neck down. Our society is so focused on instant gratification and on the superficial. It's like get fake boobs, get a facelift, whatever it is. And
we're consistently taught we're not enough.
Yes.
And what I challenge people to that you are enough. And why believe those voices that taught you contrary? What makes them the authority? Because they come with their own baggage. How dare they challenge you on yours?
Say that again. Say that again.
Yeah, why should we use other people as the authority because they have their own baggage? Why should we allow them to judge us on ours and make us wrong? Why are we wrong? Why can't I be perfectly flawed like everybody else, but it be okay?
I love what you said too, that why can't we be perfectly flawed? Because, I don't know about you, but I think that says it so much better to say I'm perfectly flawed and so is everybody else.
Exactly.
Rather than to say you're perfect. You're perfect. No, I'm not perfect. And that's, no. I know that's complete BS. So then I kind of discount everything else you're saying because I can't, it doesn't feel genuine. But I love that we're perfectly flawed, just like everybody else, including the authorities that are trying to tell me what I should look like or act like. Or
Correct. See, the beauty in that is, remember, the way that we can tell something that's real as opposed to synthetic is that they're flawed. Cubic zirconium looks like a great diamond, but a jeweler, a gemologist can look at it through the scope and tell it's too perfect. It's not real. How you know a leather is perfect or a diamond is perfect? Because they're flaws. That enhances the beauty. So if we can do that to the things we purchase, why can't ourselves be the same way?
I love that. You know, you're talking quite a bit about what I would just determine self-love. Um, how does that, why is that so important? Is self-love and self-acceptance, why is that so fundamental?
Because how are we going to move through life and we don't know who we are? Therefore, we don't know who to position ourselves with, nor do we know how to function in life. A chair knows it's a chair. When you walk in a room, it introduces itself as a chair. Therefore, I know how to take care of it such that I get the best wear. If I use it appropriately, it will last a lifetime. If I try to turn it into a ladder and change a light bulb, I diminish its value and I destroy the useful purpose of the chair. No different than people. If I don't know who I am and accept who I am, how do I determine a litmus test of who I should connect to in my life? How do I know how to create an environment that I can thrive? And how do I teach someone else how to take care of me? Because only until I can accept myself and understand who I am and my perfectly flawed self, can I teach you how to care for me. And that's one of my biggest challenges is too oftentimes, particularly in heteronormative or same opposite sex relationships, people take their history that they've had with other people and then connect it to another person that has a history, and we throw pieces and parts at each other without really introducing ourselves and teaching one another how to care for the other party. So, okay, I did with this with him or her, you did this with him or her, let's try to see how it works for you and see what happens. As opposed to, no, let me introduce myself to you. Let me teach you how to care for me. I don't know if you may want to edit this piece out or not, but in session, I learned how every woman doesn't want to be treated the same. Everybody doesn't want to be bit. Everybody doesn't want their hair pulled. Everybody doesn't want their backside smacked. So if that's a part of your repertoire and you have someone that you're with that doesn't appreciate those things, by you throwing your history on them, it's not an enjoyable experience.
I love that.
It's about me teaching you how to care for me. It's about you teaching me teaching you how to love me. But the only way that we can have the best experience is you being open to teach and me being taught and me being open to be self-aware to teach you. Because if not, I'm only setting you up to mishandle me. If I don't teach you who I am, all you can do is mishandle me.
I'd like to follow up on that, Todd, and ask you, what if you do come together with a person and you really, really care about them and he is into hair pulling and butt slapping and whatever else? I mean, because, again, we bring our, the compilation of all of our experiences and he has acclimated himself that's the only way he can get turned on, or that's the only way that he can, ejaculate. How do you handle that with the couple? How do you help them resolve that?
Well, it really depends. It boils down to a value statement. How much I value the relationship, how much I value the partner, and how much. So from that perspective, I share with them how they adapt to other environments. When you change from one job to the next job, you have to adapt to that environment. You don't take GE mindset and bring it over to Motorola. You have to adapt. You're adapting in all the other areas of your life. Why are you unwilling to adapt here? And begin to challenge them, because it is about a value. If you value the relationship now, also, but it goes both ways. It's not just one-sided. It's because, hey, this is something that I enjoy, part of my repertoire that I want. I know that makes you uncomfortable, but now, because we're all perfectly flawed, I recognize you may not want your hair pulled every day, but is that something we can do on birthdays and special days? And vice versa. Does it have to be a deal breaker? Sometimes it's deal breakers for some people. But do I value this other person to be willing to open myself and avail myself to them in a way, because it's not really a sacrifice. I'm sharing, I'm giving, I'm yielding in a loving way. But because this person loves me, they will never take advantage of it.
as I was sharing, it's really about a value statement. And am I willing to yield myself and open myself up because of how I feel about the other person to include some things that are outside of my box? Because the mere fact of being in a relationship means I have to blow up my old boxes to create a customized experience between the two of us. So therefore, I will have to bend and shape myself and open myself up to things I didn't do before because of how I feel and how I value the relationship. So now,
can I ask you something? Or
yes.
My experience has been, I'll just take one example of a couple that I'm working with now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he loved oral sex both ways, giving and receiving,
Mm-hmm.
and she was very resistant, but would, because she loved him and it was a high priority to her,
Right.
like you're saying, she valued the relationship so much.
Right.
That she would do it, you know, a few times a year maybe.
Right.
But once we did some deeper work about them connecting intimately and her understanding, you know, how vulnerable he really is and that he covers it up with these things, and how she'd been using withholding as a way of having some feeling of power, then it's like it blew it open. He doesn't feel the need to, quote unquote, have it, but she is all about it. And she said, you know, they've had more oral sex in the last 2 months than the last 24 years. So it wasn't even about the actual behavior. Have you found that?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Again, we position ourselves and make choices based on a mindset. There's an underpinning to the choices and decisions. So even when I work with people, I always talk about people only respond to your output, but they don't really understand the underpinning that created the output.
Right.
We have an experience, we have a mindset, we process it, we give an output. But every time there's a transfer of information, you lose some of that information, some of the original information. So it's to your point, and I do start off with the value statement, but now I work with the individual, because to some degree, I would even talk to, in your particular case, the woman and say, what is her resistance? What is the purpose of her resistance? It's not just a like or dislike. There's a reason.
Right, exactly.
Remember, you know, I often share with clients, because remember, some of us were taught our private parts were bad.
Many people.
Some of us, particularly women, don't feel that they're always clean because of, and they douche improperly. They do all of these different things based on how they were raised. So when you're raised and taught that your private parts are bad, and I always share your private parts were never supposed to be private to you. I teach 50-year-old women and above, or even younger, to look at their genitals and kind of teach where all the pieces and parts are, because some have not even taken a mirror and looked at themselves. And symbolically, so men typically ask for things, but those are symbolic to something else. There's an underneath, and that's what I challenge clients to begin to talk about, the why.
And do you concurrently ask the guy, why does he like to slap her and pull her hair? What is it? What's the feeling that goes along with that?
Right, but for some, it's in the midst of intimacy. It's about a sharing and a caring. It's about nerve endings. It's about sensations. It's about feeling a sense of prowess, a sense of vulnerability, a sense of weakness and strength. And it's a conglomerate of a wealth of positive energy and feelings and experience that sometimes cannot be replicated or duplicated any other way. But by allowing them to have the conversation, because I oftentimes find couples don't talk about sex at all. They do it, but they don't talk about it.
Right.
So now, you know, because I'm obviously doing what I do, being the sex therapist and the sexuality educator, I'm comfortable with it. So I throw it out there. I talk about the elephant that's in the room. And we begin to dig. And we don't do just surface intellectual talk. We talk about the experiences, how women don't want to be objectified, or how men are feeling emasculated, or all of those things, which then begins to move the walls and the barriers for them to truly see each other and be naked and unashamed and have the universal out-of-body experience.
Do you find it, one of the things that I find kind of distressing in our society is that there's this idea that, and I'm going to be, kind of dualistic here in that, but oftentimes it's like the man or the woman wants a certain thing. And they say, this is a need I have. This is a need I have to do X, Y, or Z. Whether it's have sex every day, or it's the spanking, or or it's you have to do oral sex for me before we have intercourse, or whatever it is, that there is a narrow idea of what sexuality is, and it's a need. We kind of hide behind that's a need I have.
But there's a meaning behind those words. And what you want to do is peel behind that. Why is that such a need? Why is that so important? It's not just an act. Most things are never just an act.
I completely concur.
Right. So what it is that, I always show with my clients, you come to me to help you learn how to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. So I push. Some of my clients may even say I'm somewhat of a bully and I don't like foreplay. But I get to we work to get to the root of the matter. Hey, sir, if you can explain the priority, if we can begin to dig and explain the priority, then it helps people to understand the significance. And once they see the priority, they can match the priority level, then it would happen more. But your partner wants to understand the significance. They want to know who you are. It's not about, hey, do this, do that, because you don't want to be directed that way. But if I can connect to the importance and the significance that you have, that will give me the empathy necessary, not to just do the act, but enjoy the experience with you. So we have to dig to get there. So will you allow me, and it's about permission getting, will you allow me to dig so you can really have the experience that you're looking for, but include your wife in it and share the experience as opposed to directing something that she's not fully vested in.
Yes. It's about all I can say to that is yes. It's about what's going on underneath.
Right. Because remember, if we're talking about sacred sex, it's about a shared experience, not a power struggle.
Right. Whether it's with yourself or with a partner.
Right. It's a shared, it's an experience. So even in the midst of, if I'm going to be self-pleasured, I have to let go of all inhibitions. I have to be willing to let go.
That's hard to do.
With myself or someone else. Because either way, whether I'm by myself or with someone else, there's still a bigger connection going on. It's a freeing.
It's interesting. I kind of, my mind always goes back and forth between the macro and the micro, in that, our culture is not known for being incredibly compassionate and mutually understanding of everybody's needs. So we grow up in this world where you got to fight for what you need. You got to fight for what you want. There's so much competition. And like you said, then you translate that into the bedroom and it becomes a power struggle.
Correct.
But, one thing, and I know you would agree with this, it's not your fault.
Correct.
Whatever is going on is not your fault. You learned it in the context of a family.
That's the importance of asking the why. What's the underpinning? Who told you that was the right way, the wrong way? And is it valid to who you are today? Just because I was taught as a child that I shouldn't learn my private parts, and my private parts are private, you shouldn't play with them, you shouldn't talk. However, as an adult man and wanting to have a healthy sexuality, I need to understand my full body. I just need to understand the pressure, the temperature, the texture of how I want to be touched, the speed, and so forth. How can I teach someone if I don't know that for myself? So what I was taught as a kid was wrong. As I became a man and wanting to explore myself, my sexuality, it's important for me to know myself at every dimension. So therefore, that information is no longer relevant.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts come to my mind. I mean, I've had so many clients that say, that's the past. I don't want to talk about the past. I want to talk about the future. And yet, how
Correct.
do you handle that?
Right. But well, what I share is, I said, I agree with you. I want to deal with the future too. However, there's a mindset we have today that was birthed before, and it's having a relevant impact today. So as we're dealing with you today, we are looking forward. But when I come across a block, a hindrance, some resistance, we're going to address where the resistance is coming from historically, but be forward-minded about resolution and going forward, how to mitigate that stumbling block. So again, I don't like to look back. I deal with the history moving forward, because remember, by this time in life, as we become adults, there's no feeling experience that is new. Emotions, feelings, experience don't grow and learn every day. They're there. So and I may be too technical here, but with what we do is neural hijacking. Basically, if I have a feeling today, and let's say a particular feeling that I don't like, neurologically, if we're not very present and aware in the moment, we remember every other time historically that we felt that way. They blend those moments, so I respond today as though I'm in my history. It's not always relevant to the moment. So what I teach people is that, well, let's be present and be honest with your experience. I call it present, honest, sincere in every moment. Be present, honest, sincere in every moment with your experience. Connect to your experience and then share with the environment what your experience is to level set if it's accurate. Because sometimes feelings can deceive us. If I say to you, hey, it's snowing outside, you say, whoo, it's snowing. You're in a warm room. That chill you got is not relevant.
Right.
So it's about being present. It's being aware, understanding, hey, I'm confused about what you're saying. I don't know what your motive and intent is. But by addressing it in that moment, it now clears up the moment. It establishes boundaries for future, and now we can move forward much more successfully.
So it's about understanding and not just being, well, it's about being aware and not just reacting habitually.
Correct.
One question that I'd really like to get your take on, Todd, is I see so many clients who feel like they have either the choice of settling for how things are or leaving. Mm-hmm. And what is the difference between settling for something that is completely unfulfilling, mm-hmm. and making the best of what you have?
Wow. So for everybody, it's different. Like to your point, I have clients that choose to settle. It is what it is. Here are the obstacles that I have in life. I'll just make the best of it. And some people choose to live in mediocrity. I don't think it's required, but everybody has a right to choose. However, as you're aware, on my website, and I believe in life is worth celebrating. I believe in functioning at your greatest self, because that's your best offering to the world, to your partner, and to all of that you believe. And I firmly believe that everybody is empowered. We're empowered from the mere fact that we always have a choice. I believe we're one choice from being exactly where we want to be. So even though I have clients that come to me and talk about those things, I begin to challenge their true belief, because I believe in, as we become complacent and accept things randomly, we slowly erode who we are over time. So I always challenge them. I said, that's a nice thought for right now, but who are you 5-10 years from now? And how will that erode who you are as a person? And do you want to, in my own personal fear, which I work not to happen, is to die a bitter old person. Do I want to live in mediocrity? Where is that mediocrity really going to lead you? And ultimately, they begin to remember, I believe in stimulating avenues of thought. I plow ground. Then they usually take that and process, however, but when they come back, we now are able to talk about the empowerment and making choices. And sometimes the relationship that you're in may not be the healthiest for you, because you may have got into that relationship when you weren't necessarily in your full right mind. So I made some choices and decisions that weren't best for me. So now do I just accept it and live out my existence, or do I actually love myself and the other person enough to position ourselves to be exactly where we're supposed to be? So,
well, and sometimes I think this is a really hard thing for people is, what if even though we're not that happy right now, we're not that happy right now, but what would it feel like if we really invested ourselves in making it something extraordinary? Is it possible in this relationship that has settled into something mediocre for 20 years? Is it possible to make it extraordinary, or should I leave and start over?
Well, if now from that perspective, and I have quite a few couples like that, but in that particular setting, they're both here together. And if they're both here together and they're both willing to put in work, they can get there. If you're committed to excellence and you're both coming together of one mind, it is attainable. The challenge only really becomes if one or the other isn't fully vested. Anytime if one of the parties is not fully invested, they will exhaust the other partner. But if they can recognize, and what I highlight to a lot of couples is, look at what you've invested. Look at your life together. And typically when I come across people 16, 27 or greater years, look at what you've all invested. And do you want to throw the baby away because the bathwater is dirty? At least give 9 months to a year to put in some real committed work. And the story will tell itself. You don't have to choose. The story will be transparent and clear for both of you to see. If they're going to be committed to the process, committed to doing their own personal work, holding themselves accountable for their piece to the puzzle. Mm-hmm. It's not just the other person. It's you too.
Right. Right. So, how do you answer people when because this is another thing in the coaching world that I've dived into rather than the psychotherapy world. People want to come in and get 1 month worth of coaching or 3 months worth of coaching. And that's it. They want to be fixed in that short time, which to me is just a reflection of the culture. Again, the instant gratification. Right. I love what you were saying is you've got to give it 9 months to a year.
Right. Because remember, this life is a process. I recognize many people, I came before the microwave. But I know you got microwave, you got a computer now on your phone, you can do whatever you want to do with it. Life doesn't work that way. Not the deep stuff, not the rooted stuff that helps us to be grounded. The surface stuff that's pale, that leaves us feeling empty, is instant. Some stuff you have to put work in. And it didn't take you a minute to get here, so why is it going to take you 3 months to unweave all of what's been weaved over 20 plus years and expect it in an instant to change? Life is incremental. Hey, it'd be nice to get a college degree in 4 days.
Doesn't happen. So what do you tell people, Todd, when they say, okay, let's say I invest $10,000 with you, and I stay for a year. What if we end up, it becomes clear at the end that we're not meant to be together? Didn't I waste that money?
No, you haven't, because in the process, you've evolved into your greatest self. You've invested in yourself. You became clear. You became aware. And now that you both function in your greatest self, you can still move in your greatest self. It's just not together.
And I always think that people who are willing to invest that much time and energy and money into their own self-awareness process
Exactly.
that, they become a blessing to everybody around them.
Exactly.
They become empowered. They change the conversation everywhere. And they usually can uncouple more amicably.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. They'll either stay together, uncouple amicably, because they're both clear and they understand why they're making the choices that they're making. Oftentimes I see people divorce and it becomes so adversarial, and it's not necessary. However, but with going through the process, both understanding your own baggage, your own perfectly flawed self, and coming into a new sense of self, a fuller sense of self, making healthy choices and decisions, no matter which decisions are made, they're done in the right mind. Therefore, there's no need to be upset with one another, because we know why we're doing this, and we can hope each other great lives. And if we cross paths again, it can always be a pleasant exchange.
And hopefully stay friends. I mean, there's just, I really believe that if you ever really loved someone, you'll always love them. The form might change, but you don't have to, lose the love.
No, not at all.
You mentioned early on that something about that it's harder in heterosexual normative relationships to understand one another than it is in same-sex relationships or non-binary. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the LGBTQ issues and diversity, people of color issues? I mean, do those play in? Is there anything that you can offer specifically to that conversation?
Well, in that, the reason I say in heteronormative experiences that they don't talk as much, and I find that in the alternative sex life world that people talk a whole lot more because they're already out of a box.
I love that.
I put them in. So they're already having uncomfortable conversations because their lives have been uncomfortable. For them to be comfortable with themselves, they've had to wrestle with themselves, wrestle with society. So therefore, walls and barriers that some of us don't put that some of us allow to be put upon us, they've already blown up. So it opens the door to more dialogue, more communication that typically in a heteronormative situation that I don't see as much of. But and I can't quote the research, but there's research out there that talks about the different demographics of sexual expression and the happier, who's happier. And I really believe the happiest is really about how you communicate, how you're willing to be vulnerable, how you're willing to be open, how you're willing to express yourself, determine whether it's a same-sex relationship or opposite-sex relationship, the level of intimate satisfaction. As a society, from the traditional heteronormative society that we have, you remember Leave It to Beaver show. Society didn't even show married couples sleeping in the same bed. They had twin beds in their bed.
Right.
I mean, and I had a client recent client, whose parents actually lived that way. They had twin beds. Sex was a taboo subject in the house and in the church they went to. So now that they're married, they think sex is bad.
Right.
Not even a conversation. So you have a gentleman that has very tabooistic, if that's even a word, very structured idea about sexuality, that there's something wrong with it, and a wife that's sexually expressive. And trying to balance that and open the dialogue, is wrestling with his personal sense of understanding from a moralistic societal perspective, in addition to his religious perspective, and so forth. So it's unearthing. So you have to break through all of those walls just to even begin to have a dialogue. And we can represent what the experience is supposed to be.
That's such a perfect example, Todd. And it just makes me sad. It just makes me sad in my heart to think about the challenges that we as human beings face to actually be able to co-create sacred sexuality. And that is such a perfect example. I want to use that to wrap up our conversation and have you talk about what your free gift is. But it so points out how much compassion that we have to have for ourselves and for your partner. If you have a partner, the amount of compassion that we have to have while we're going through this experience takes a lot of courage.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Again, in society, we're taught to have a bravado, taught to have these walls and barriers. Actually, I'd like to come to a point in society where we recognize that it's okay to kill the representative that we walk with, the mask that we wear, and show our true selves. That's the only way we'll actually know that we're being accepted for who we are and not this false image that we've put out there. Ultimately, we all want to be accepted for who we are. But if we never introduce that to the world, how will we ever know that we're accepted?
It's such a paradox because our world, like we were saying, is so judgmental, so critical. You're supposed to look this way and act this way and be this way. And so to take off the mask is the risk of being ostracized or killed. And yet we can only live if we are willing to risk being ostracized or killed. I mean, it's such a powerful challenge.
Oh, yeah. But sometimes, you know what? You have to choose you.
I agree.
At some point, you say, you know what? I have to choose me. I have to give myself permission to be.
Before I die.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What is it to live, to have lived and not lived?
Oh, and so many people are doing just that.
Exactly.
They're living, but they're not living. That just really touches me. It makes me want to cry, Todd. What is that?
Yeah.
And
I come up with weekly Toddisms, to put on my Instagram page or the Inner Peace Counseling Instagram page. And one of the weeks said, be a key factor in your own equation of life. Because I see so many people living outwardly, trying to be everything to everybody and nothing to themselves. What kind of life is that?
Yeah, it's the kind of life that you regret at the end.
Right. And I truly believe we have the power to have a life worth celebrating if we give ourselves permission. And I work with couples and with individuals, families, to give themselves permission to be who they are on the inside that doesn't always manifest outwardly, and help them build the boldness to just say, hey, here I am. Here's my perfectly flawed self. If you don't choose to love me, I've already figured out how to love myself. I'm good.
And I can find people with whom I am.
Exactly. And then those people that resonate with me will truly want to connect with me.
Right, because your energetic vibration is just out there, and then instead of hidden behind this facade.
Exactly.
Okay. So I love that. I love that you're encouraging people to be their true selves and to do the work. And I would say what you're saying is fight to be who you really are and to have the celebratory life that you deserve. Fight for it.
You're worth it.
You're worth it. I love that. Thank you so much, Todd. So let's segue into, you mentioned Instagram. I imagine you're on Facebook too.
Correct.
Is it all under Inner Peace Counseling?
Yes. It's all under Inner Peace Counseling. And on Facebook, on Instagram, obviously, if you go innerpeacecounseling.com, you go to our website, you'll find resources, things of that nature. In regards to the free gift, because I truly believe all of the things that we do outwardly really starts from within. So what I'd like to do, there's a resource that I have. It's called the My Imago theory. Created an intervention that has my imago is my image of love and relationships. To start there, what it does is kind of shows you how the family of origin has impacted your current situation and how to remedy it. So if you go to my website at innerpeacecounseling.com, you go to the resource tab, you can download a step-by-step guide of how to create your own image of love and relationships and see if it's healthy for you and where you want to go as you move forward.
Wonderful. That sounds really exciting. I can't wait to get it for myself. So thank you so much for joining us today, Todd. I know that our audience is going to love you. And, don't forget to send me feedback about the interviews, because it means so much to the speakers who have taken time out of their really busy schedules to be with us and to share their wisdom with you. So please give us feedback about it. So I love you all, and thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next interview. And thank you, Todd Malloy.
Oh, thank you so very much. Take care for now. Bye-bye.